I think we've used the term burnout in order to simplify something that's incredibly complex.
Burnout is described as a state of emotional, physical and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. We've been speaking to Anna Pinkerton, the burnout and trauma prevention and recovery specialist who founded Burnout Awareness Day, to find out more.
Once upon a time, it would have been called nervous breakdown. And I think that nervous breakdown was a really good description of it because there's a big neurological element to burnout. Basically, we've all got a certain level of circuitry, and burnout tends to happen when we've gone too far beyond our limits and for too long. So burnout pitches up in multiple forms, in a way, a physical or a mental break or rupture, so that the organism creates something to slow the person down or to make them stop. So burnout is the term that we now use for that complex condition. True burnout is life-changing. It affects every single element of your life and that of the people around you. It doesn't happen in isolation. The people that burn out tend to be very driven, incredibly dedicated, committed people. They've lived at their bandwidth for a very long time, and something creates the rupture. Now, that isn't always work-related pressures. It's the kind of confluence between work hours, workload, high levels of responsibility, and then whatever that person has in their emotional template or their neurological template that predated the current situation. So although workplaces can do an awful lot to preserve people and sustain them, it is a joint responsibility. It's about being fully aware of self and of workplace culture and how those come together. Early trauma can be a motivator for people. They want to have drive, partly to come away from the trauma, partly to prove to themselves that they can almost deal with it. And, the thing is, it's like a cycle of evidence. The person that's highly driven is giving evidence to their brain that, look, I'm over it, I'm dealing with it, even if they actually haven't dealt with the event or set of events in reality. The evidence is, look, I cope, I can do a 60-hour week, I could do another 60-hour week, look at what I can do. I can go on for years. And of course, in some ways, they're right, but it's not sustainable. And that's the problem, that the burnout can hit people very dramatically because they've been caught unawares. This wasn't recklessness. You didn't mean for this to happen. Our brains will just love the evidence. We'll go, oh yeah, I like it. I like what I know. I could do 60 hours week in, week out. But we've got to presume that's too much. We've got to presume that in order to sustain ourselves and preserve ourselves, we do take the breaks. We do have lunch away from the computer. We very driven people often do not do what will sustain them.
So Anna, what kind of people are most at risk of burnout?
The people that tend to burn out have what I call high levels of inner brutality. They berate themselves, they harangue themselves, they swear at themselves, they are really demeaning and diminishing in their thoughts and their actions. And so they might be incredibly driven in order to come away from or turn their back on previous difficult experiences, which is great. But fear of something is not a motivator for long. And the inner brutality inadvertently uses up their circuitry. So when you're then faced with external pressures, it fills up the other part of your circuitry very, very quickly. And so people that are close to burnout with high levels of inner brutality tend to then turn it against themselves again. What's the matter with me? I don't recognize myself. I used to be able to manage this. I'm an idiot. I'm weak. I can't take the pace. And that then becomes inner brutality in itself and overwhelms the circuitry. It becomes another kind of truly vicious cycle inside.
And it sounds like people may not know that they're burning out, but it's something that may be recognised by others, colleagues perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. What they often see is they'll just have a thought. They don't quite seem like themselves. And that's what I say to people. That's okay to go and say, because it has no judgment. You're saying, you don't quite seem like yourselves. You're not saying, oh, by the way, you're weak or you can't take the pace, which is sometimes what people think that's what you're saying. Are you working too hard? That feels like there's a judgment there. And that person within a brutality will actually say, oh, crumbs, yeah, look, it's obvious that I can't take the pace. Whereas you don't seem like yourself, or would you like to come and have a cup of tea? It's quite an innocuous way of highlighting something that's really entrenched already. I think companies can do so much, but it's not all of their responsibility. It's a joint responsibility of educating the individual about your humanness, your limits. Everybody has them. There's no exception. That stress must be episodal and followed by a period of convalescence. And that goes for every single day, not just like go crazy for 6 months and take a week off. We need to retrain ourselves that self-awareness brings self-caring. Because I think what actually happens at the moment is people have well-being programs and self-care programs. You know, somebody that's on the verge of burnout, if you say to them, go book a massage or book a yoga session, they're like, where am I going to fit that in? They feel overwhelmed by the task. And what I'm saying to people is, how do you become self-aware enough that you want to take care of yourself? Because otherwise we're asking you to do something when actually we don't care about you. And you can't not look after yourself at the end of the day, because you're not an automaton, you're a human being, and you have your frailties whether you like it or not. And if you keep extending yourself beyond your limits for too long, your mind or your body will create something to take you down. I think there's been a misconception that burnout is like a fizzling out of somebody's fervour, and it's so much more than that. We're not born with inner brutality and driving ourselves into the ground. And I think a lot of what happens in the corporate world is that it's inadvertent. Then a lot of companies are not trying to burn their people out, but they do because they're not cognizant of the culture, if you like. I mean, if they were doing it on purpose, and some companies don't give a damn, then truly that's corporate abuse.
You can find out more about burnout and Anna's work at annapinkerton.com. This content was provided by Improve, Personal Development Radio. Visit improveradio.uk.
A Communication Generation production.